Resident Evil Degeneration premiered October 10th, 2008 in Japan as the first full-length CG animation feature in the Resident Evil franchise. Made by Capcom in partnership with Sony Pictures Entertainment Japan, after a brief theatrical run, the film came to both DVD and Blu-ray in late December 2008. It even came to UMD. God, I remember those. Degeneration is the film that kicked off the suite of Resident Evil animated projects that would follow in its wake. But it begs a question, is it any good? Well, to answer that, I've drafted in Philip Hoy and Spencer Davis, my co-hosts of In PS We Trust, a PlayStation podcast, and two guys that generally like this kind of stuff. Together, we will break down what works, what doesn't, and if it's worth your time all these years later. Now let's dive in. Welcome again to the Resident Evil review discussion series. Today, of course, we are tackling Resident Evil Degeneration. And by God, what a film experience that was. So guys, we came hot off from doing Resident Evil Death Island only a few weeks ago. How did you enjoy Resident Evil Degeneration? Give me your top level thoughts and a rating if you don't mind. Now, Spence, we always start with yourself on this review discussion, so lay it on me.
Sure, mate. So, coming into this film, right, I have fond memories of this movie because I was one of the people that owned this on UMD on my PSP, and that is how I first watched this film. And since then, I've always thought to myself, this is my favourite animated Resident Evil movie. And now, thanks to the beauty of what we're doing here today, I have watched it again. For the first time since, really. And does it hold up to my nostalgia? God, no, it doesn't. It really doesn't. I thought that whole opening scene was so much longer than it was. It really isn't. But I'll keep it to myself for now about my full thoughts. But I would give the movie, probably, to be fair to it, a 6.5 out of 10. Maybe, actually, potential to go up.
Wow. Is that a 6.5 on the Resident Evil scale of movies, or is that just the 6.5 in general?
Resident Evil movies, mate. Oh, no,
Okay.
I don't know, actually, because then something has to be a 10. And that's... nah. So, no. Overall.
Okay. Alright, okay. So, a little bit disappointing, but it is what it is. Not the worst thing known to man. 6.5 is not too shabby. Mr. Hoy, what about yourself? How did you feel?
Well, Davey, I'm glad you asked, and we have delved into the past with this one, haven't we? We're going all the way back to 2008 for Resident Evil Degeneration. And by God, this movie has aged, and it hasn't aged well, has it, guys? Throughout its 98-minute runtime, we were treated to a whole host of horrible animation. It was like watching a video game cutscene. It was just mad. All the way through, it never got to the movie part. It was just a weird cutscene. That's how it felt for me. As you said correctly in your intro, this is the first full-length motion animated film that we got from Resident Evil. And I think at the time, I think a lot of people did enjoy it because it was sort of bleeding edge for its time. But as I said earlier, it hasn't aged well. You know, in this one, we got Leon S. Kennedy, as he correctly introduces himself throughout the movie. And Claire Redfield, and you got to know who Claire was because she was the girl in the red dress. She always seems to wear red in animated movies, just so you know it's Claire Redfield. And this is the first time they appeared since Resident Evil 2, back in 1998, so I appreciated that nod as a fan of Resident Evil 2. It's mainly set between two locations, so we got the airport with the breakout, and then the Will Farmer Research Facility, and that's where you kind of get the reasons to the movie, and of course our big epic ending. The timeline, if we're going to put it on the Resident Evil scale, this was set back in 2005, roughly between Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5. I had a look at Rotten Tomato and they give it a 67 out of 100, which pretty good, I think, for this movie. For myself, I give Death Island a 6 out of 10. And I think this movie is slightly better, so I would go along with the full 7 out of 10 for this one. But it does suffer from a few points. The uncanny valley all the way through is just horrible, and no one is realistic throughout the whole film. It's got a weird love story, and of course, and I'm going to tell you this, guys, we're going to jump right to the end, there is a twist. There is a twist in this film. It's got a story, and there's a twist, which is more than we can say for Death Island, because that barely had a story. So that's why it gets a point.
Okay, so you're saying you put it above Death Island then? So far in our little internal rankings, you're putting it above that? Would you agree with that, Spence? Would you put it above it as well?
I would 100% agree with it. It definitely is above it, and mostly for all the points that Phil's just stated. It has a story. It actually has one. Although it is a story, but it has one. So yeah, completely agree.
Alright, well, for me, guys, I came into this with low expectations. Now, I've seen this film before. I think I've seen it twice or 3 times over the years, but I couldn't really remember it. I remember the airport scene, and that's about it. I thought it just was all in the airport. I didn't realise there was anything else apart from that. So while I was watching it, I was kind of going along with it and wasn't really sure when it was going to end. And it felt like it lasted for ages, but it was only 90 minutes, which was weird. The pacing seemed all over the place. But I finished it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really quite good. Yeah, literally.
Hey, we've won him round.
I know. I came out of it and I thought, actually, yeah, that was all right. There was quite a bit in there that I really did enjoy. And there's issues, and Christ, we're going to get to the issues. That's for damn sure during this. But as an overall experience, even with how old it is and the animation being absolutely dog shit, I came away quite enjoying myself and thinking, oh, do you know what? I could watch that again. And I certainly didn't feel like that after Dead Island, ever. Like, no way did I think like, oh yeah, I can't wait to watch this again. And I did, put myself through it twice. So, overall, on the scale, I think it is better than Death Island, 100%. 7's quite high. I think I'd probably settle on a 6, I think. If I put Death Island at, say, a 5, I think I'd go for a 6 on this. I can't remember what I rated Death Island, and I'm sure after we review all these, we'll do like a tier list rating of all of them. But this is where I'm going at it for now. With the initial thoughts out of the way, let's start diving into this. And as you guys have already eloquently put across, this movie's kind of split into 2 separate subdivisions. I suppose you could probably even make a case for a third, where it's just a downtime between the 2, but we're going to stick with 2 things. We're going to stick to the airport, and then we're going to move it on to the Will Farmer research base. Let's start off with the airport scene. Of course, this movie kicks off. You got Claire coming off a flight. She's met by some random Indian bird and her daughter. Did anybody else understand why they were in this film and what her connection was? I feel like I totally either glossed over it or I just lost interest. I honestly don't know what it was.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research on this one. I tried not to go too deep into the Resident Evil Wikipedias for this information. But the lady and the girl they were meeting, they were part of TerraSave, the same organization that Claire sort of works for. And the relationship was the auntie and the daughter, I believe, called Rani, was the little girl. I don't think the mother had a name.
She's barely in it, to be fair. But yeah, so they meet these two characters sitting down, and Claire's just there waiting for this auntie to come pick them up in their limo, apparently. And she's having a joke about it. Haha, pick you up in the limo. And while she's there, it all kicks off. It absolutely kicks off and goes mental, because we get a flash onto a plane and we see some guy who's sick. He's like coughing. Oh God. What's the matter, sir? In this world of viruses that run amok all the goddamn time, I'm sure this is nothing to worry about. Hopefully this is just a common cold. Wait a second. He's turning all grey and got all veins running down him. I better do something about this. No, I'm not going to, and this plane's just going to crash into the side of this terminal. Absolute carnage immediately. Now, for me, when I watched this, I loved that airport crash. I thought it was sick. I thought it was really well done, and some of the shots from above, which showed the plane kind of going in and then kind of skewing itself through the terminal building. I thought it was really, really well done. I thought it was super, super cool. What did you guys think about all that? Did you think oh God, here we go, typical kicking off straight away in Resident Evil animated film fashion, that would come to cement itself as a trait of this series. Did it work for you or not?
Sure, I think, you know what? It actually did really work for me. I think the whole airport kind of area is probably a standout for this, and it opens really well with that airplane. It is a bit... The woman sees his decrepit hand that looks like it's about to fall off. She goes, anyone want a cup of tea? Anyone? Just fucks off immediately. She's like, you know what? Maybe not. And she gets handed a note or something, right? Did they show what that was?
I don't think so.
No.
No, I don't think so. Maybe it just got burnt up in the plane. Or maybe it was a note saying, I'm quite ill.
I'm run. Just says run.
Yeah.
Stop serving people and look at me. Leave.
You don't want to know what was on that note, mate. It was just pure filth. He saw that air hostess and he thought, well, I'm pretty much gone here. I'm just going to slip her a dirty note. See if I can join that Mile High Club before I join the zombie club.
Maybe it worked as well. Maybe that's why she wasn't off saving the plane.
Yeah, exactly.
That was why she screamed. She opened it up and it was just a big picture of his schlong.
Too big for the whole picture as well, so he's hanging off. I think it could have been that maybe he had like a really bad nut allergy, and maybe he wasn't ill with the virus all along, and he was just like, please stop serving nuts, and like his throat's closed nervous, so he's like, hands her the picture. It's just a bag of nuts with a cross over it, and she's like, oh no, I've been serving KP nuts this entire flight, this poor bloke. And he's like, better not do anything about this. And she's like, oh, my boss would kill me if I'm being serving nuts on this plane. And little do you know, the pilot was allergic as well. Maybe it wasn't a zombie outbreak. Who knows, right? But we get confirmation that it was a zombie outbreak because when the plane door comes out later, zombies fall out of that thing like wildfire. And I gotta say, I loved that. I thought, what a great way to bring more zombies into this.
I thought that was absolutely wild, and it brought me out of the film because I thought to myself, in Resident Evil 1 and 2, zombies couldn't open doors. Here, they can open plane doors, and plane doors are vastly more complex. So how did they open that door? Surely it should have just been a plane filled with zombies that they couldn't get out of. Or surely, if the writers had thought about this, the plane would split somehow, and that's how the zombies got out. I think later on they do actually get out a gap in the plane, rather than just opening the door to walk out. That seemed really strange to me, that part.
Mate, I had that exact same thought when it happened. And all I thought was, all they had to do was not everyone's infected and someone's trying to get off the plane when it crashed, and they're the ones who open the door. Instead of, why can a zombie open that door? You got to twist like a big crank and stuff. You have a hard time doing that in the game as one of the main characters. What a nightmare.
Yeah, they could easily have just had someone falling out of the plane as he tried to escape the zombies, and then the zombies fell on top of him and just murdered him, rather than a zombie just casually opening the door and then just falling over the side. It just seemed strange to me, that part.
Well, I'm glad you guys have brought that up, because I did not notice that at all. I didn't think about it, and maybe I should have thought, in the world of Resident Evil, you'd need to have the plane door crank, and that would be somewhere else completely random across the terminal that nobody would have yet, you know? So they'd have to come back, oh, we need the crank for this. And then you need to move like a stair to maybe put yourself along it, walk up, gung, 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 gung. Go into your menu, insert the crank, inspect it. Is this the right way around? Put it in, then turn. None of that. These zombies just crack the code immediately and just open the door. But yeah, I didn't really think about that. That's a really good point, actually. And I suppose we've kind of skipped over to, well, it's my fault. We skipped over quite a bit of like what happens right at the start of this film, because I think to this film's kind of detriment, it does all its heavy lifting plot-wise in the opening montage, in terms of letting you know kind of what's happened, in terms of this organization, Will Farmer, the Senator's connection, which comes up later on throughout this film and is kind of like the underlying plot of this entire film. Yeah, it's all just done in like a weird kind of montage for the last about 5 minutes, and then you're expected to remember that for the remaining like 85-minute runtime of this film. Really, really strange. And at the time, when I watched it, I thought, this is going on for way too long. I don't really care about seeing all these people protest and all this stuff. I don't really care. And then when I got to the end, I was like, oh my god, I was supposed to remember all that stuff. And it all started like kind of flashing back to me. Oh no, that stuff was really important. I just didn't take it in. Did you guys have a similar experience, or were you kind of hooked from the start of that montage and seeing all these people protesting and wearing zombie masks and going, bleh.
100%, mate. There was a lot to take in, wasn't there? They introduced Curtis, Frederick, Rani, Senator Ron Davis. Of course, they gave you some background on TerraSave and Will Farmer. It was just a lot to take in a very short amount of time. And for Resident Evil games, we always complain that there's not much story. They literally just went, wallop! There we go, have some story straight away with this movie, and you just had to take it.
I didn't pay attention to any of that story. All it was, I knew about the protest, that's fine. Fella comes in doing his whole, I guess his head ripped off him. And then I don't know how that actual zombie could have even been there. They were literally upstairs in an airport, surrounded by people, and he manages to get to the senator. Makes no sense. I'd have to imagine he wasn't fully infected until he got right there. But then what are the odds? What are the odds of that? It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't really make an awful lot of sense. Now, I imagine that lone zombie was set out by Curtis, that he infected him. He says about like he's done like an infection at the airport, and that kind of starts it off, and there's that zombie there that seemingly takes out these guards. Now, you would have thought, right, these people that are sent to guard a US senator would have basic idea or knowledge about what to do in a BOW threat. You know, there's been a nuke in Raccoon City, they can't stop going on about it all the way through. You would have thought somebody would be like, you know, maybe we just shoot these guys in the head, get it over with. But instead they're like, no, the guy gets bitten like frame 1, security guard gets bitten frame 1, that zombie takes like 4 people out on his own, which is wild, absolutely wild. And then I'm thinking, oh well, this isn't too much of a big deal, you know, 4 zombies to shoot, game over. And that's then when the plane comes in and there's now like 300 zombies that come off this plane, and it's all kicking off. But from that moment of that initial infection, we see the senator's kind of true colours. We see that he's just an absolute pansy whenever he's put into danger, but he's all blabbermouth, isn't he? He's all going off and speaking off and talking shit to everyone throughout the film. Now, Senator Ron Davis, I think, is key to this entire film. He is so interesting as a baddie because he's got this fatal flaw of being a coward, but also just talking non-stop shit to everyone. Now, his face may look like a pack of melted butter, right? It looks terrible. His actual like face design and everything, he looks like as if somebody's wearing like a witch mask, which they got a bit too close to the flames, and it's kind of melted a little bit. And that's his face.
He looks like a cross between Ron, Jeremy, and the Penguin. That's what I thought when I saw him.
Yes.
It's kind of like an amalgamation of those two people squashed into one in really poor PS2 graphics.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. He looks like the kind of face that if I saw him on like a commercial for raising funds for like ex-firemen that have been burnt horribly, I wouldn't be too surprised. You know, I'd be like, yeah, well, he's been through some shit. Whereas this guy, he's just got that melted ice cream face, and that's just it. And from that, he's become really bitter, and he really likes his coffee made in a certain way. And that's it. So we get this introduction from this guy, who then underpins the entire plot, or quite a lot of it. From that initial interaction that we see with him and his kind of character, hiding his face from the baseball bat, trying to walk through without anyone noticing, and even when it kicks off, still going off and raining hell on everyone that's around him, calling them all useless. Did this guy work for you throughout this film, or did he become more of an annoyance and actually detract from the viewing experience? Spence, what do you reckon? Did Ron Davis work?
I'd say he worked for me. I actually I didn't like him, but I did like him. I liked what his character was there for. I liked his purpose. He was just a little ugly little bastard man, wasn't he? And he just abuses his power, and that's basically all you want in a villain. But they're always cowardly, and he literally grabs Claire, he's like, please help me. And then immediately, as soon as they're safe, he's like, you fucking bitch. He's straight on it. He is livid. He has had a horrible life. He got bullied loads in school, and it shows. And he's risen to power, and now he's got big men to do stuff for him, which they're not very good at apparently. But I do like him throughout the whole film. You always kind of think maybe he's the mastermind. Maybe it was him. But then maybe it wasn't. It kind of keeps you going along the film, thinking maybe he's the real bad. And I think that's quite cool the way they've done that.
What about yourself, Mr. Hoy? Did Ron Davis work for you?
Well, Ron Jeremy definitely worked for me because he drew so much focus, I think, from the outset of this movie. And as Spencer correctly identified, people thought he was the bad guy all along until we got the bit of a switcheroo towards the end. But he's an absolute scumbag of a character. He's not just on that, well, he's not actually on that super endgame boss level, though. He's a scumbag, he's a bad guy, but he's not super bad. He can still live. He's still okay. We can let him get away with it, maybe end up in jail, because he was the one that I think approved the human testing for the vaccine for the T-virus. So he doesn't care, he's just in it for himself. He wants to up his stock value, I think this is his whole game. He wants to earn some money out of the whole T-virus epidemic and come up with the vaccine and make some dough out of it. So ultimately, yeah, he's just a bit of a scumbag, but not really the big end boss as we thought he was when he was introduced to us.
I literally just remembered during your spiel, he's immediately shown she was a scumbag as well, because they interview him on TV, don't they? And she says, what do you think about all that human testing in India? And he says, looks like Halloween came early. And you think, raw, on TV? You said that on TV as a senator? Oh my God. And he was just like, he's like, walks off. You think, Jesus Christ. I thought that was sick. Outrageous.
He's an absolute loose cannon. You could tell that he's just a nightmare, like an absolute PR nightmare. I don't know how he keeps winning the elections and he's just a senator. I have no idea. Because this guy, any chance he gets to just be an absolute dickhead, he takes it and he runs with it every single chance. There's a moment later on with the senator which is just absolutely class. You thought this character can't get any worse. And they're all standing on, fighting all these zombies in the airport, shooting them all. And the senator, for just literally no reason, just because nobody's moving and he wants to go, he just chucks Rani, the little girl, just off. Just literally spears her off the top of this whole, luggage for literally no reason, just so he can run out. And I was hoping, please God, let him get shot. Because he looks like a zombie, right? His face is, horrific. So I was hoping he'd get shot, and he never does. And he's the only character that, you wrap the film, and you think, oh, he's bound to get his, comeuppance or whatever. And it's a one line at the end. Oh, yeah, he's resigned. It's oh, is that it? This guy did some horrendous stuff that's probably all caught on CCTV, spearing a 9-year-old girl off the top rope, just onto zombies. All this crazy shit he gets away with saying. And it's just oh, yeah, he just resigned. Oh. It's mad. This guy is an absolute class character. I loved him. He was just so typically evil and just out for himself, and he just doesn't care. And what a legend. What an absolute Senator Ron Davis. Bring him back. I hope he has an appearance in one of the other films. I hope to God. He's he made this film for me. I absolutely loved his character. It was just so ridiculous. Every time you think he can't get lower, he somehow finds a way. What a hero that I never knew I needed in the Resident Evil franchise. Bring it back for RE9, I reckon. So bringing it back to the plot, we've already established that the plane's already crashed in, the zombies are everywhere. Claire finds herself in there looking after Rani and trying to find a way out of this entire mess. And so she goes to hide along with the senator and a few other survivors out of the way. A safe place. And who should come in to save the day? Leon S. Kennedy. He strolls in looking like he just walked out of Resident Evil 4, wearing the exact same outfit, to come in and take charge. Now there's two other characters that appear with Leon in this bit. There's two little subordinates. Does anybody want to give me some facts on who these characters are?
Sure. So we've got Angela Miller. So she's a police officer. And she's working for the SRT. And her partner is Greg Glenn. He's also a member of the SRT, which means the Special Response Team, apparently. They've just turned up to help out.
Now, out of these three characters, the one that I thought was the absolute goat, the person that I actually was really sad when he died, is Greg Glenn. This guy is an absolute don. Doesn't listen to anyone, firing off bullets from his M4 like he's got an unlimited clip. He's just got infinity bandana on because he's firing rounds into every single person. And what I loved about it was that he has just this moment that is a proper ode to Aliens, my favourite film, where he's just one-handed in M4 and he's like, come on, you want some? You too? Just shooting them all just like Hudson in Aliens. And I love that. I got that reference. I was like, yeah, that's sick. I hope this character doesn't die. Oh. And he goes out like a bitch. Well, he goes out in like a kind of, you think a hero's death, but it just doesn't really work. Now, this guy, I adored. Did you guys have the same connection to Greg as I did?
Greg, I mean, for one, what's he doing having two first names like that? Greg Glenn has to be the laziest character writing I've ever heard in my life. Greg Glenn. Come up with a better name. You got Leon Scott Kennedy, Claire Redfield, Greg Glenn. It's like, it doesn't. It's such a terrible name, and he's so full of himself. On the chopper coming down, he's like, shoot him in the head. And with the first time he encounters zombies, what does he do? The literal opposite, shoots everywhere else. And then he has the balls to turn around and be like, yeah, to Leon. He deserved what was coming. In all honesty, I loved him. He was very fun. He's that character that you want to survive as long as they can, knowing that they're going to die at some point. It's bound. Any film with a character like that, they're written to die. And it's just a shame that it came so soon. I liked him. He did work for me. I wish we got a bit more time with Mr. Glenn, but death comes for us all.
What about yourself, Mr. Hoy?
Well, alpha male Greg Glenn. I thought he was quite an interesting character. He was very one-dimensional, wasn't he? He was very, headstrong and ran in without thinking. Now, my question goes to you guys. How did he pass the SRT training? Because he was just running in, just gunning. It just seemed like he had very basic training. He was like, here's the gun, go and shoot stuff. Because he didn't understand anything else. He dressed the part, he looked the part. Okay, he read a few of Leon's hand signals when they jumped down from the plane. He didn't wear gloves, so he must have burnt his hands as he came down on the rope. But there was no training there. He was just a loose cannon. But there was one really funny part to old Greg, and that was when he was having a chat with Angela in the bunker before they jumped into the airport. And he was like talking about the zombie outbreak, and he was like, ooh, just like a scary movie. Ooh. And I really liked that part. I thought that was hilarious. Really liked that part. But no, I'm quite glad he died, actually. I thought he was a bit of a dick.
Oh, what the hell?
Yeah, he did. Like, Leon was like, shoot the head, and he's just like, just listen to him. He's trying to help you. He saved you. I think he saves him like twice, doesn't he? Before then he dies.
Yeah, he's constantly saving him. I get what you're saying. He's a proper liability. You wouldn't really want him on your team. But if you had that kind of bravery, that kind of gumption that good old GG has, where he could just go into a room and unload like a clip of ammo into like all these hostiles without really being too phased, just by psyching himself up, this guy would be an absolute killer if he was against, non-armed combatants that weren't zombies. He'd be able to wipe a room out in no time at all. He was taking names. Just turns out he didn't listen to the golden rule of shooting them in the head. And by the time he adapted to that, it was all too little too late. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I felt after he got bitten that there was something there they left on the cutting room floor, or they just didn't want to explore for whatever reason. I found that after he got bitten, he like turns to them and he's like, go, go. And you think, oh yeah, he's going to pull out some grenades from somewhere now and have like a hero's death, where he's like, come and get me. And like explodes them or something. But no, they just run off. I don't know what he does. And next thing, he's just in the crowd of zombies. And he's just running. Just as a zombie, you're like, oh well, you only made things worse, GG. This is just bad news bears all round. Now your mate's got to watch you stumbling around as a zombie, and they're not even going to put you out. She's not even going to put you out of your misery. I thought she might turn around and take a shot and end him, like as a way to be like, well done. Sorry about this, Glenn. Mr. Glenn. But no, she's like, oh, well, he's a zombie now. And just leaves. And I was like, oh, alright, never mind. Angela, you could have gone and spared him the rest of his endless life as a walking zombie. But no. you're just going to let him live out the rest of his days rotting in perpetuity. Thanks very much. Thanks. GG. Taken too soon from us. Too goddamn soon. Now, the other characters that we have in this, of course, we've got Leon. We touched on him very briefly. About time we kind of explore his character a little bit. And I'm thinking we just kind of break down on the rest of the kind of key characters in this. Before then, we move through some of the kind of highlights and some of the cool things that happen over this movie. Before then, we go into the things that don't actually work. So, Leon is our next guy. Now, we've already mentioned his intro. There's something off about Leon in this movie, guys. Something really off, really out of character. He's just straight-laced, no-nonsense hero. Doesn't really pull off any witty one-liners. Doesn't use any comedy. Nothing to break the tension. This is Leon if he was just carved out of granite and didn't really give two fucks about anyone, really, other than the ladies, which they got right. How do you feel about Leon being represented in this way? Did you quite like it as a change from what we've seen in so many different things in the past?
You say there was something off about Leon, but there was something off about everybody in this movie. I feel like the looks was okay, right? He looked like, as you said, he comes straight from Resident Evil 4. He had the leather jacket on. He had the centre parted, not a hair out of place. But yeah, he just looked dead behind the eyes when he was talking to people. And I think that goes across the whole crowd of people that we have within Resident Evil. There was just no emotion for anybody. You just didn't really care all that much because they didn't really seem that realistic now watching it in 2023 compared to maybe when I watched it back in 2008 and I believed every goddamn thing. But you are right, I did miss the quips and the kind of like jokey side of Leon. There was none of that translated into Degeneration. That was sorely missed because he seemed very one-dimensional, and as you said, it just was Leon but just kind of 50% of Leon's character really there.
I completely agree, boys. I reckon he's just come out of RE4 saving bloody President's daughter, and now they're like, Leon, man, thanks so much. But listen, there's also this senator, right? Yeah, do you mind doing something else as well? And he's just like, fucking hell. Oh my god, do you not have any other staff you could employ? Why me? And they're like, you're the only one, Leon. You survived Raccoon City. It's like, I'm traumatized from it. You keep making me go back. He is having the worst time. No wonder he's dead behind the eyes. He is sick of it. I don't blame him at all. I did miss his little quirky personality, his little Spider-Man quips that he chucks out every now and then. But I think fella's just tired, man. I think he's just having a rough go of it. He still wants his vacation. He says at the end of like every time we see him, he's like, oh, we're gonna have a great holiday after this. Nope. You work for the government, mate. They ain't giving you no time off. Get back to Spain. He's having a rough go. I think I miss him from RE4, but it makes sense that he's tired.
He's very quick to an outbreak though, isn't he? He's like a homing pigeon for any bioterrorist attacks that happen with the virus. He's just straight there. It wasn't even like 10 minutes after the outbreak happened, Leon landed. How does he know it's going to happen? Has he got some kind of sense for the virus going off? There's going to be another zombie attack. I just know I'm going to head for it before it's even happened. How is he there? He can't be everywhere, can he?
I'll tell you exactly what it is. You know how when there's a war going on, they'll be like, we could have 2 F-15 jets dropping bombs on you in 12 seconds. What they do is they just always keep Leon on a jet at all times. This is why he never gets on holiday. And the second there's a rumble of an outbreak, they're like, fly him out, fly him out, fly him out, fly him out. And he just drops. They just drop a Leon straight on the situation. And that is exactly what they do. Maybe
This is like a clone of Leon. So maybe they thought, we sent him in to take on like an entire village of people to rescue, Ashley Graham, and I don't think we've sent enough Spanish cops. We've only sent 2. And there's quite a lot of villagers here. Maybe we should clone Leon. And, just in case, they've cloned him and he's everywhere. So, unlike having to fight him in the jet all the time, they've just got one in every major town, city, everywhere across the globe. And they could just deploy one. But this one was missing the humor gene. And this guy is very much just a case of, he's just there to kick ass and take names, and that's all he does. And kiss the ladies. because he's straight in there, smoozing away. Which, I mean, we'll come to that soon, I'm sure, but Jesus Christ, I can't believe he was doing it. How he didn't get like a rape allegation, I have no idea from this movie. Because my guy's on an absolute madness. In fact, let's just go for it. So right at the end...
he does it in front of Claire. If we're going to jump into the madness, there's the girl you were just flirting with in Resident Evil 2. You've brought her along, and you've got 2 words to say to her right at the start when you meet her. You were just like, all right. Great. Cheers, Leon. You're meant to be a ladies' man. You're meant to be smooth. We're meant to be learning from you when we play these games. But no, he just properly blanks Claire, doesn't he? And then he moves on to the next bit of skirt. Terrible behaviour, mate.
That's him teaching you, mate. That's how you get a woman's attention, mate. Ignore her, move on to the next. She'll be like, oh, I can't believe it. She'll do everything for you. Trust me, Leon is training you right, my friend.
I mean, it's absolute madness, right? Leon kills Angela's brother, right? Like, absolutely just, like, murks him. And then literally the next chance they get, they dive underwater, and she's like under there for like 0.5 seconds, and he's immediately kissing her. I was like, bro, it's not even been enough time for her to potentially lose her breath. He's like straight on there, and surely blowing carbon dioxide into someone's mouth underwater ain't gonna help him. I don't know if it's like Sonic bubbles, you know, like when you're underwater in Sonic and you go over the little bubbles that come up and you get your air that way. Stop the countdown. Does that work in real life? I've got a feeling it wouldn't work. Like if you went to share your air in that way. Surely not.
I'm pretty sure it does work, but you just can't do it for long because eventually it is just carbon dioxide. But you can swap oxygen back and forth, and you treat each other as an oxygen tank. And that's what he was doing, so it makes sense. If anything, he could be like, well, you're not going to... If you say you drown, right? Or you're about to drown, someone pulls you out and gives you CPR, you're not then going to be like, you kissed me? Ah, and have a rape allegation, are you? You're going to be like, oh, cheers, mate. Yeah, sound.
But she was...
Except she was keen anyway, mate. She was like, oh, Leon. Let's go diving again sometime.
I can't believe she said that.
That was ridiculous.
I thought you've just killed my brother. You just dropped all this shit on him. We survived all this stuff. And we literally just dunk our head in the water, like as if they're bobbing for apples, right? They're under there for literally no time whatsoever. And he's straight on it. He does not miss a trick. He's immediately on for that kiss. And they come out and he doesn't even like mention it. He's not like having a little bit of like flirty banter with her. He's just blanking her until right at the end. Let's go diving sometime. And it's just like, oh, bro, let it go. Just murdered her brother in cold blood.
Yeah, but he saved her from incest rape.
Yeah.
Yeah. Christ.
Yeah.
That was a thing as well. Maybe that's just a thing he said to put her off. He was like, come with me. Your brother's going to rape you. You big G-virus zombie. Come with me. Come to the water. I'll give you a sneaky kiss after we've been under there 2 seconds. And then when I get thrown onto one of the fallen platforms, I'll fall on you in a very provocative kind of style. So my whole body is right up against you. And when we stand up, I won't let go of your hand. I'm there for you. I'm there for you. Until he's not. And then he's back on Claire.
Immediately.
I do feel sorry for Claire in this, because you would have thought these two characters, they had so much like kind of flirty, kind of back and forth, like this little relationship that doesn't have much time to really blossom in RE2, but it still does blossom, and it stayed with us as fans all the way through. And you're right, guys, she turns up and Leon's kind of just like, oh, how's things? You alright? Oh, you're just caring for people now. I'm out there fighting people. You took the caring role. It's like, bro, Claire's still an absolute badass. And I mean, speaking of Claire, Phil, you mentioned that none of the characters were done well. I think Claire was done quite well in this, personally. I think she really was. It shows like her caring side that was brought out when she was looking after Sherry in RE2. And whenever she gets a gun, she's absolutely cracked. She is dealing people death immediately. That moment when we were talking about Rani, where Rani gets pushed off and Claire jumps down to save her, Leon takes ages to give her a gun. Like, way longer than I think would ever be realistically possible to do. It's actually a bit cruel at that point. They've gone on for ages evading zombies, Leon's got 2 guns and he doesn't give one to Claire. Makes no sense whatsoever. The guy's a bit of a dick, to be honest. He finally gives her one. She catches it out of midair, which is sick. That throw when it goes like slow-mo towards her. She catches it and then she like deals like 6 zombies down like that. It's like, bro, give this girl a gun. She is insane. And then they come back up and she gives it back. He should have said, keep the gun. Like, what the hell? You're better than me.
Take both.
Yeah, Jesus
I've
Christ.
Everything, please.
Who needs a gun when you've got an umbrella styled like the umbrella logo?
Oh, yeah.
Now, come on. Come on. Has anyone got a weapon? And she comes out with an umbrella. A red and white umbrella. What happened to that? Why didn't she just bring that through the whole movie? We love that type of stuff in Resident Evil, don't we?
Only thing I appreciated about it was, doesn't she make a joke out of that as well? And say like, oh, this is typical, or something like that. And I thought, oh, well, at least they've referenced it, rather than it be like, you know, just a deadpan Easter egg with no kind of character behind it, which is what the later movies are really, really bad at doing. But yeah, I think Claire, in summary, really, for her character, I think she kind of gets a chance to do a bit of everything. Now, would I have liked to have seen more Claire? Yes, I definitely would. I think that Leon being the kind of dry fart that he is throughout this movie, I think Claire adds a little bit of humanity to it, and I could have done with more of her, but what we did see did kind of give away most of her character kind of traits, and I did enjoy that. Can I take it from that, Phil, that Claire just did not work for you whatsoever?
I mean, she worked on a certain level, and I agree with you on the points you've covered, but Claire always seems to fulfill this role, especially within the animated CG series that we're watching through. She is always the damsel in distress. She's never as good as the boys, which I find super strange. And when she gets a chance, as Davey correctly identified, she's badass with that gun. And then he takes the gun off her. It seemed so strange and kind of almost patronizing that I'm the man, give me the gun. It kind of felt like that moment. And we're going back to 2008. Maybe it was that way back in those days. But I think if this was remade, Claire would be a much stronger character and she would have a gun from the start.
She's like the only main character we have that isn't actually a police officer or some sort of task force. She's just Chris's sister who came to check on her brother. And that was it. And that's how she was introduced. She was just working for a TerraSave. I don't even know what they do. Really, they help people who have been affected by these bioweapons and stuff rather than actually killing zombies themselves. So she can be a badass when it's necessary, but she's not one all the time. And I think they actually portrayed that well, where as soon as she gets the gun, she's not going to bring one. She's not a police officer. She's not technically probably allowed. It's America. Definitely have a gun. Should have 12 really. But as soon as they hand her one, and it was such a sick scene. That's what I vividly remember from watching it on my PSP and thinking, oh, look at that. And yeah, she clocks like 6 zombies in a second to save that little girl. And then she's like, oh, yuck, gun. Oh, no. No, thank you, Leon. Nah. And to be fair, I respect it. She's not a killer. It's not what she wants to be. But she has it in her to be one. So she whips it out when she needs to. I think they portrayed that well. And I think they actually did Claire quite well for what they did with her. Just a shame she got that little glass shard at the end.
Yeah, it's a damn shame she took the glass to the leg. I mean, that's a fatal blow for anybody in Resident Evil. And I thought maybe that could have been a nice little Easter egg where they kind of bandage her up. You know, where Leon bandaged her up, like, and maybe have like the same kind of bandages from that massive explosion that goes off in that facility that takes out all the metal, glass, exposing the girders underneath her, all that in the concrete. But Claire's kind of alright from it, other than a bit of glass to the leg. I thought, well, fair enough, she made a harder stuff, right? These Resident Evil main characters. I thought they could have used that as a scene to kind of flash back to RE2, and instead of Ada putting the bandage on Leon, it could have been like Claire having bandages from Leon, which would have been quite nice, but they didn't go there. Maybe it was too on the nose. When we're talking about characters, we might as well bring it over to the next female character, which is, of course, Angela Miller. Now, she is the other person from the task force that we mentioned alongside GG, and she has kind of a major role throughout this entire thing and a very personal stake in that one of the main antagonists is her brother. Dun dun dun. Curtis Miller. What do you guys think about Angela? Did she work for you? I mean, we've already spoken about the potential rape allegation she could lay at an American agent, but did you quite enjoy what she added to this film?
I mean, I thought Angela Miller, I thought, what are the odds that out of all those agents, right, Leon only took 2 of them. And then when they left the airport, only 1 of them survived. And that is the one who happens to be the villain in the movie, related to the villain in the movie. What are the odds of that? Just a random soldier who's just there, popped by to help out. Special response team showed up and she's like, Curtis Miller, it's my brother. It's like, why? What are the odds? It's outrageous. With Claire and Chris, she's come to find Chris. Angela hasn't heard from her brother in 3 years, and it just so happens that the one time she's given a job, or it's his doing, somehow, luckily, by chance, you're also here, and now you're gonna get raped. It's mess. I thought that was like lofty at best. I don't think they should have been related at all. I thought that is weird. She was a good character, and I think she was well portrayed, but then whilst also being devastated about her brother, she was also like, oh, Leon, oh. It was just weird, man. I don't know. I liked her character. I thought it was fine. But there are some big things that just didn't work for me.
Phil, what about yourself?
I think we know where most of the budget went, and I think it was lip filler for Angela because they seemed to make quite a big deal about her being quite overly feminine. She was definitely going to be the standout love interest for someone along the line, and enter our character, our main character, Leon S. Kennedy, walks in and he correctly identifies his team. I'll have that blonde stunner in the corner and I'll have the loose cannon. You two with me. Let's go. He's playing the numbers, isn't he? He knew the loose cannon was going to get caught. He knew he'd be the hero and look good in front of the women. Brilliant move there, Leon. Brilliant move. But the character overall, I didn't really enjoy the whole love story. It just seemed cringe for me watching it now. Maybe back in the day I was all along for it, but I think now because of the animation it was all a bit like, oh, I didn't really need to be in this movie, really, did it? He's kind of got a love interest anyway with Claire, so why are we introducing another woman? She could have just been a woman sort of officer within the SRT that was brothers with Curtis. That would have been okay. There was no reason to kind of shoehorn this kind of relationship into it, and of course we never see her again, at least to my knowledge.
I mean, we'll have to watch the rest of them now, and we'll look out for these kind of things. Maybe she makes an appearance, who knows? Maybe her, the senator, GG comes back. Who knows, right? We didn't see him get shot. He could have had the vaccine and he's around here, loose cannoning up somewhere in the Resident Evil universe. But no, I gotta agree with you guys. I think that her character was just weird. Her portrayal was really strange. Like, she was obviously supposed to be sexy as hell, and I'm sure that 2008 me watching this was like, God damn, Angela. But now it didn't really work, and I felt the same kind of thing as yourselves, really, in that she was kind of wasted. The big thing that seems to be a theme that we're picking up across these Resident Evil movies, even with only doing 2 of them, and we've done the 2 opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of time here, is that things that are set up with a character's backstory are never really given a payoff. Now, with her backstory, it's explained in this that she jumped in headstrong into a situation and she managed to save the person that she was saving, but it ended up getting like 3 other people hurt. Was there a moment where she learnt from that in this movie? Because I don't think there was.
Kind of. It was her brother said something to her which made her think differently about that situation, and then also at the end when she's holding Leon's hand, she tries to sacrifice herself, and he says, if I don't save one life, how could I save any? And it's kind of like, that's why you jump in to save the child. You have to always try to save whoever you can. And she's like, oh, he's right. And then, you know, he shoots her brother in the face and she gets all horny from it. It's yeah, but she does learn from it.
Oh, fair enough. Well, maybe that's just my memory then failing me. I don't know. I think I would have always liked to just see more kind of scenarios where they're kind of learning from it and growing a bit more. But it doesn't really seem like anyone really has much chance to actually grow across this movie. Seems like everyone who kind of went in came out pretty much exactly the same, maybe apart from Angela. And that's kind of the only one, I suppose. But has anyone got any kind of other thoughts on our heroes of this before we move it on to some of the villains?
The only other thought I have is that although I don't agree with the love story, I also don't agree that Claire was the girl that it should have been. Just because even in RE2, as much as sure Claire's there, Leon's macking on with Ada. He's literally snogging her on the train. It's any woman gets it, man. Leon's a dog. He just sees a woman, he's like, hell yeah. And then at the end, literally, she's just said to Leon, basically, let's make out again sometime. And then Claire's like, what was that about? It's like, don't worry, do you need a lift? And it's like, Leon, you dog. Yeah. I think, to be fair, as much as he's lost his humour, he's gained some immaculate riz. And I respect him for it.
He shags. For sure.
Why do you think Angela was in a different outfit? Hey? As soon as they got out, she was put through the wall.
Oh, well. This has certainly gone some places today, and I didn't expect some of these guys. But let's move it on to some of the villains. So we've already covered off our favourite senator with Ron Davis, but let's move it on to good old Curtis Miller. The second kind of villain, I suppose, the villain that you all think he's going to be the villain, and then turns out, is he the villain, or is he simply a puppet, a pawn, to be used across this story? Curtis Miller. Now, this guy didn't really get an awful lot of screen time. He kind of popped up here and there and seemed to get access to things that I never thought he'd ever be able to get access to, but he finds a way. It's all because he's been played, right? He's been played from the start. Did this guy's whole story work for you in terms of his backstory with Raccoon City, his daughter and his wife getting caught up in the destruction of that city, him not being able to get in, and holding this grudge and wanting to learn the truth about Raccoon City and who was behind it all along?
I quite liked his reasoning for doing things, and his motivation was in the right place, but I think his execution was all over the place. How do I get back at this corporate, entity that's behind all the bioterrorist attacks? Oh, I'm going to inject myself. That doesn't seem like the right kind of solution to the problem there, does it, Curtis Miller? It didn't seem to go down well. But one thing I will say about Resident Evil films, they don't seem to lock up the labs very well, do they? Because I think in the Resident Evil series on Netflix, there was a section of that show where just two kind of teenagers walked into Umbrella's headquarters. And in this one, Curtis Miller seemed to just get full access to the G-Virus, which seemed overly strange. You would have thought there would have been some security at the Will Farmer research facility. It's on level 4, wasn't it? Surely. That's where the security is at its highest. Nope. Turns out he could just walk in, pop the pill in his neck, and there we go. Go beast mode.
It could have been that there's an entire scene where he's dodging lasers. Where he's doing all this crazy stuff to get access to it that we just didn't see. Because we only really saw, one real level, I suppose. And then we saw kind of them just climbing a board and getting on top of all these different levels. But we didn't really see kind of the inner workings of this base. So I'm going to use my headcanon here to say that Curtis Miller is able to evade pretty much everything that anyone can throw at him. I'm talking like turrets, mines, lasers, a knife fight maybe with Krauser. Maybe Krauser comes back up and that's there and Curtis Miller overcomes him. But yeah, you're right, Phil. I don't know why this guy all of a sudden just thinks, yeah, do you know what? Fuck it. I'm just injecting the G-Virus in me. I do not understand that kind of logical leap at all. When he could just go out there and say, hey, they got the fucking G-Virus in here. Just go on the news. Hey, guess what I found at this lab over here? G-Virus, this stuff's well deadly. Don't inject this. Turn you into a monster. That's all he had to do. But no, I'll show them. I'll show the world. Madness. Spence, Curtis Miller, give me your thoughts.
Well, I think, for one, to counter your boy's point, I think access to the lab, surely he was getting it from the head researcher, right?
Yeah, surely.
Like from the lab. Obviously, the fellow who betrayed him at the end, and hence the reason he injected himself. I think it makes sense, but I, again, don't agree with the whole thing of, oh, he's just a protester who's trying to find out more and expose the government for what they did to Raccoon City. Just to expose them, let's do it again. Let's cause Raccoon City 2.0. And it's like, what are you on about, man? That's always the thing. They think, well, I want to expose someone, so to do it, I am going to kill millions. It's like, what? It's such a stupid plan, and it's the plan every single goddamn time. And I don't know. I really don't know. I'm glad he wasn't actually the big bad, as much as he also kind of was. I don't think he had enough screen time to be a better villain or a better good guy. I think they kind of left him in the air and just said, well, I hope you've got 1 minute to learn about who he is as a person and that he loves his sister in more ways than one. But that's literally it. They just shoved it in your face. And it was like, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, all right, Curtis, that's the one. And they show you him immediately as well. He walks past Claire. She's like, that's Curtis Miller. Won't see him for 40 minutes. And it's just weird. Absolutely weird. But, I mean, he served his purpose. And I do kind of wish there wasn't that relationship between him and Angela. Because it wasn't necessary. It literally wasn't necessary at all in the entire plot of the film. But it's fine that it was there. A bit of additive story. But was it necessary? No.
Can I also just say, with the G-Virus, I really thought that the person who injected it into Curtis wasn't Curtis itself. I thought it was going to be Frederick, that he'd got into a tussle and he injected him with it. And that's what I thought would happen, but no, he just chucks it in himself. Also, isn't it a case with the G-Virus, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, my RE2 knowledge is kind of failing me a little bit here. The G-Virus needs a perfect kind of host, otherwise they turn into the G-Unit. G-Unit. Turn into G-Unit. Turn into 50 Cent and all those guys. They turn into those kind of monsters that you see down in the sewers of RE2, right? If it's not a perfect kind of host. So what are the odds that the main kind of bad guy in this turns into, a William Birkin 2.0? Very strange. Very strange that happened. Who am I? It's a numbers game, isn't it? And, your numbers can come up more time. Lightning can strike twice, can't it? So, it's just what happens. But did you enjoy seeing the G-Virus back here and having these kind of nods to Resident Evil 2? Because there was quite a number of them. There was flashbacks that were shown across the film, showcasing some of the events of RE2, as well as having the two main viruses from that game present in the T and G virus. Did those kind of nods and those throwbacks to RE2 work for you guys? Now, Phil, I'm going to come across to you first, because you are a massive RE2 fan, especially the original. Did you quite like seeing that scene where they're in their classic costumes running through Raccoon City?
Yes, Davey, yes I did. It was perfect source material to use throughout this movie, and I think it lifted Degeneration, and I think it give it some sort of purpose, just to have those sort of references spotted throughout this movie. But the kind of mutations I thought was a little bit lazy. He did look very similar to Birkin with his stage 1, but of course the stage 2 went somewhere slightly different with it. I thought, okay, the only identifiable part here is that he's got long hair, so good job they gave it him, because he would have just looked like Birkin right at the start with his phase 1. But the stage 2 was really interesting, and I really liked that. So I really like the references here that they used.
Spence, you're a fan of RE2 Remake, so those classic costumes would have looked a little bit alien compared to what you're used to, but did you still appreciate the Easter eggs that were thrown in throughout this film?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely more a fan of the remake, yeah, but I've seen the original costumes. They weren't alien to me, but I did appreciate that little nod. I was actually a big fan of stage 1 of Curtis, because it's literally one-to-one with Birkin. And you have to imagine when they're ejecting him, surely it's right there, innit? Because that's where the eye comes about. And it's exactly the same. Same arm and everything. Both the same. And I was like, oh, that's quite cute. Nice little nod. It is the same virus after all. But then I am glad that it had its own twist on stage 2. And God, I'd have loved a stage 3. Massive. At the end on the train in RE2 Remake where it's just surrounding the train. Imagine that coming up from that massive hole. Oh, that'd have been sick. But no, he just got snubbed at the bottom. But I did appreciate what they did. I appreciated the nods. And I was quite a big fan of that G design. I was a fan of it. Also, the T virus, when all the zombies, I think all the zombies actually looked great. I think all the zombies looked very akin to RE1 and RE2 basic zombie design. And I liked that a lot. It actually looked like in RE2 Remake, that first zombie that turns to you and looks at you in the shop. I was like, it looks like that. I was quite happy. I was quite faithful designs I found.
I really enjoyed that one Easter egg that happens, and if you haven't played like RE2 recently or anything like that, or it's not burnt into your brain, you probably wouldn't pick up on it. But it's where Leon goes in to meet Claire, and she's got a zombie behind her. He says, "Get down!" and like shoots the zombie behind. And I thought, yes, what a great Easter egg. I thought that's so well done. And I think, like you guys have said, they've worked throughout this entire movie for me. All these little Easter eggs. The umbrella one, even that we mentioned, I think that even works because they just laugh it off. I think they handled them great, and they worked throughout the entire film. And I just gotta love seeing some of these things, and seeing the G virus back is always a virus that I think is criminally underused in Resident Evil. You know, we really haven't seen too much of it, so bring it back. More G virus, please. More. Chuck it at me. So I think we end the character piece by talking about the big kind of bad, the brains behind the entire operation, Frederick Downing. Now, this guy is introduced right at the start of the film. He's in the airport as soon as Claire and Ronnie get off the flight. He's there waiting for his pickup, and then we don't really see him again until after the airport section, when they're kind of talking about the cure and about what they're going to do, and they're all blaming him and his corporation, and actually it turns out that he's kind of a good guy. He's making the cure. He's trying to sell the cure. This guy is like kind of a roller coaster throughout this film for me, and I wasn't sure which side his allegiances lay, and I thought that really worked throughout the entire film in terms of spinning intrigue and who's really the bad guy. Is it him, or is it the senator? Is it just Curtis acting alone? I really liked his inclusion throughout the entire film up until one part, but I'll save that for now. Do you guys find that Frederick Downing worked for you? Did you quite like him and the role he plays throughout this entire film?
I quite liked him, but I think it was obvious, and it was obvious for one reason, that he was behind it all. He was British. He had the most English accent when he was talking to our main characters at the start of the airport scene. So it's obvious in every kind of American drama, it's always the English guy that's behind it all, pulling all the strings. So yeah, it kind of gave it away straight away for me. But I did like the switcheroo. That was the twist that I was talking about within my intro, because you kind of feel like he's a good guy at the start if you ignore the British accent clue. And then you get the switcheroo at the end, where he is kind of behind it all and kind of the big bad, trying to profit from everything and taking the G virus away to sell, I think, to some militant group or something. I think that was the ending of the story, or someone. But he was going to make a lot of money out of it. I think it all came down to money at the end with this guy.
Yeah, it definitely was all down to money with him. He worked for me, I think. You're bang on, Phil, in saying it was quite obvious just because he is British. But I did very much like his character, because he was kind of smarmy. He had immaculate riz as well. All of his vaccines have just been destroyed. All of them. There's a terrorist attack that's about to happen in 4 hours. And he sees Claire and he's like, "Want to join me for some late afternoon tea?" I'm like, oh. And Claire's like, "Yeah, I guess, yeah. If it'll get me into your building, Mr. Man, sure, you can have your way with me." And I thought that worked. And obviously she couldn't. There was a second love story going on. And I don't know why. He just trusted her with everything. And then he was like, "You're going to tell Leon? Oh no, I better get outside, cut the phone line, and fuck off." It's just, I don't know. He trusted her a bit too much.
So that wasn't the reason he actually gave Claire for bailing when he was in the office with her. He said there was a fire in the server room, and we know from the recent Phasmophobia delays that fire in a server room, that causes problems. He's got to go. So yes, he made his excuses and he bailed straight out of there.
That part that you guys are talking about is the part that I just didn't understand what the fuck was going on there. Like, why would you bring... I get why you'd bring Claire back. I was going to say, I don't know why you would. Of course you would. She's a nice piece of ass. Yeah. And he's a British connoisseur. You know, you get some American little ass, you're going to be quite happy with that. So he thinks, yeah, bring her back. I'll give her a nice bag of Earl Grey. She's going to wolf this down. I thought, is the tea drugged? Is it a case that she's going to be, pass out, and he starts doing some crazy operations on her? Leon has to save her. No, nothing like that. He's just an idiot. Because he starts telling her all his plans. It's like, bro, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? She works for the enemy in TerraSave, so you think that, right, he's trying to get her on board. Get her on side, good PR, maybe they stop harassing him and his company, and he can, start selling these vaccines to wherever it's going to go. But no, he's just a fucking idiot. You're not going to tell Leon. Please, no. She's like, you had no problem telling me. It's like, oh, fuck, I didn't, did I? Shit.
I want to also know, though, when he picked her up in the Rolls, or the Jag, at the military base, it was night. And then when he arrived to the facility, it was day. So had she spent the night with him in between that? I'm not sure. It seemed a strange time jump during that kind of whole process of her moving from the base to the research facility. Did anyone else notice that one?
It's just far away, mate. Really far little lab, I mean, Leon teleported there at the end, but it's a long drive, mate. Long old drive. But yeah, I don't know, mate. I think he's an idiot. And the worst part of that whole little bit of the fire in the server room was that Leon then calls Claire. And she's like, what do you mean? He said there was a fire in the server room. How gullible can Claire be? After he's just been like, you're going to tell Leon? She's then like, oh yeah, it must be a pretty bad fire. Actually, yeah, go on. She believed him. It's ridiculous. And then literally less than a minute later, he's like, oh, actually, I'm in level 4 and there's a time bomb. And you've got to go. The time bomb has 4 seconds to go because it blows up immediately, by the way. It may as well have just been a bomb with a fuse rather than a time bomb. Blew up right away. And it blew up perfectly spherical, only damaging the middle. I don't know, man. What a mess that little scene was.
I'll tell you what also didn't make much sense. While we're on the subject of things that did make sense. When they walk into that room, into the facility immediately, they have like the for the door, where they're like, oh yeah, the air sucks in, this keeps the roof up. I thought, oh, this is going to be a major plot point. This roof's going to come down and, all this because someone's going to break the glass or something. No. It's just not really mentioned. I was like, oh, okay. And I guess it shows how safe this facility is. And I gotta say, you guys were taking the piss earlier about this facility and it not being that safe and not well that guarded. It's pretty good. It detects BOWs and then sets stuff on fire. So it's a lot better than just having an auto self-destruct sequence that Umbrella built into every single lab. Someone got out, destruct the entire base, please, and take the city out alongside it. Sure. One zombie's out, press that self-destruct button. Thank God we put that in the mansion and that we put that in the underground base in Umbrella as well, in Raccoon City. But, didn't have one of those, so they've learned from that mistake.
The only thing where you mentioned that whole thing with the door and it being different pressure in the building, the only time that's used is when Leon is on one of those lift things just counting down about the fall. And she goes and changes the pressure to fix it to make it the same as outside. I couldn't tell what that actually did. She's like, oh, I'd better go change this. And she changes it, shows on the screen, she's like, yes. What? It didn't do anything. I was so confused. And also, why does this Will Farmer base have the fattest cave underneath the thing when it's not even supposed to be holding infected? It's just got them to make cures. And they thought, oh, we better put a 200-foot drop below this in case someone gets it. It doesn't make sense. Mess.
Should have just had the self-destruction there. Maybe it would have just been cheaper to have the self-destruct sequence, but they thought, well, it won't really fit with our really ultra-modern virus center that we have here with all these different levels and all these different security mechanisms. But
didn't fit the vibe.
Yeah, it didn't fit the vibe. Yeah, let's just have a massive drop for no reason, just in this one place. That'd be class. But, it does set up a pretty cool action scene. And I suppose on that point, we might as well go on to some other little bits before we bring this to a close. Let's go through some class scenes, some scenes that stood out to us and we really enjoyed. Now, we've covered a few of them as we've gone throughout this, especially ones that have little Easter eggs or moments like where Claire catches the gun mid-flight from Leon. Slow-mo was used throughout this film quite a lot, but for me, I found it actually worked. I thought every slow-mo shot they had was actually class, and there was one moment that I thought was sick. And it's where Leon's got to go from one side of the base to the other. And it's like, just the camera's really close behind him. And it's him doing all this like kind of just flips and all this cool ass parkour across the environment. And there was nothing else really happening. It was just that. but I thought it was so fluidly animated and with slow-mo used at just the right times to accentuate that action that I thought that scene was one of the standout ones from this entire movie. And I watched that and thought, fucking hell, it's great. Even though the rest of this film looks like arse. Thought that scene looked immense. Were there any kind of moments for you guys that really stood out, or is that one kind of high above the rest?
I think for me, the standout scene of the entire film is that parkour scene you just mentioned. I was going to bring that up if you didn't, mate. The entire film isn't very well animated. It actually just kind of isn't. But that gun flip scene and that parkour scene, that's where the budget went. That parkour Leon was doing, I was like, Leon! He's just been tossed from one section to the other, smashed his back into a thing. He's like, watch this. Sickest fluid flips. And slow-mo, to be fair, they did use it at the right times, but they weren't greedy with it. They used actually very little slow-mo in that scene because they just kept it fluid. And I thought that was, by far the coolest scene in the whole film. And I wish we saw more stuff like that because that was actually sick.
I've got to agree with you guys. I thought that scene was really, really intense. And it kind of ramped up the pressure, didn't it? Because we had falling platforms that Leon and Angela had to get off quickly. We had the tyrant running around trying to mutilate them or breed with them, depending on which one he was chasing. And then, of course, we got to see some of Leon's parkour skills as he dived over all the different sections of the falling platform. It was an incredible scene, really. And I'm not sure I agree too much with Spencer on the sense that I wanted to see more of that. I think it was just used enough there to kind of perk interest and build tension towards the end. And I thought it was used really well at that stage.
This is the thing. Slow-mo is one of those things where you go too far with slow-mo and it just becomes funny. Like Death Island is really bad for this. Like there's slow-mo all the time and it becomes so overused that it just doesn't have its impact anymore and it just becomes laughable how over the top it all is. Whereas this, for as weird as this sounds to say, you know, when we're talking about G-Virus, you know, infected mutants and all these zombies and falling platforms into bat caves and all this stuff, it felt a lot more kind of grounded than, say, like Death Island does. I don't know what it is, like the action of it, even though it's pretty over the top, especially as far as Resident Evil is concerned, there was nothing there that I'd like laughed at, that I thought like, oh my, this is just outrageous. It kind of just felt like, yeah, alright, this fall into this giant platform and they're fighting on top of it and you get a countdown which says 5 seconds until this drops. And we just roll with it. And I was like, yeah, do you know what? I was on board for like every single piece of action that this film had. And I thought that they didn't oversaturate it. There was just enough sprinkled in to hold my interest. And when they did have an action scene, they used it quite well with the budget that they had. If it was a choice between this or going over and above, like Death Island, I'll take this any day of the week.
I think it was because this movie was very much focused on the people that we were introduced to. It was almost like a self-contained story where the people in peril were people you had got a bit of backstory to. I think in Death Island, they were obviously like, we're going to be killing some unknown target somewhere across the world. You didn't care so much about those people, did you, in that one? But with this one, especially towards the end, you really wanted Leon and Angela to pull through at the end when they were getting chased by that giant T-virus monster, abomination. So yeah, definitely. I think that's why I felt a little bit more for them.
I will say, it's just like you mentioned then, Phil. I remember coming out of Death Island and they're all like, oh yeah, job well done, we've smashed this. But no one survives except the main cast. And now I'm thinking, you know what? This movie, it's the exact same thing. Same as every other Resident Evil movie. Not a single grunt or soldier survives, except the core main 3 at the end. Not one. Every single one of them get in an elevator. And Leon and Angela think, I'm not going in there. Why would I go in there? That's obviously gonna fall down for some reason. We'll just stay here. And guess what? That's what happens. They always come out of it thinking, well done, we've saved the world again. So many deaths. Every time. They are not good. Well, they get the job done, but at such a cost. Every damn time. It's ridiculous. I'd love to just see one soldier one time just be like, oh, Oh, that was a bit ropey, wasn't it? And he just survives. That'd be so nice. It'd be so nice to see some random grunt be like, "Thank you, Leon. Thanks for saving me." And he's like, "No problem, mate." Or he'd be like, "I can't believe you lived." Jesus.
Yes.
But I'd love to see that just once, please. We've got a few more of these films to go. That's what I want to see in the future.
Okay, so we'll keep an eye on that. We'll also keep an eye on how many times we get overly sexualized female characters that Leon is just macking on frame fucking one. We'll keep an eye on all these different things as we move through this entire series. But guys, I suppose it's time for our final thoughts on Resident Evil Degeneration. Spence, I'll come over to you.
I'll tell you what, as far as my memory serves, I do still stand by this probably being my favourite animated Resident Evil movie. For now. Obviously, we need to revisit the other ones. But I do think, so far anyway, we've got this or Death Island at the moment.
Yeah.
It's not close. But as it stands, this is my favourite animated one. And I think it doesn't have very tough competition to come. So hopefully it stays that way. But I did enjoy this film. I would be happy to watch it again. But I do wish we got a bit more time in the airport. And that's kind of it. So sticking with my 6.5 for everything. But in terms of Resident Evil movies, so far, it kind of has to be a 10 if it's the best one. But it doesn't, does it? It depends what we'll rank the other ones. But it's definitely not a 10. But I'm just going to give it a 10. You know, it's...
Jesus.
If it's the best,
Jesus.
It's the best one.
Oh my God. Wow.
The best score you've ever given across all the podcasts and everything we've ever done, Spence. A 10 for this.
On an animated Resident Evil movie scale.
Okay, alright, okay.
It's a 10.
Okay,
And on that
caveat.
very specific scale, it's the best.
Loves his scales, doesn't he, for these reviews? Absolutely loves them. Phil, let's hear your closing thoughts.
Well, I'm not going to go as wild as Spencer. I'm going to stay with my 7 out of 10. And I completely agree with Spencer. This is the best one, or the best one to my memory out of all the animated Resident Evil movies. So I look forward to reviewing the next couple if we're invited back. But we did miss one final thing that happened within this movie. And it was the ending. The people from Tricell picked up the leftovers from the mutation down in the bottom of the bunker. So that's how the movie ended. And of course, we do have a sequel, and that's Damnation. So maybe there is going to be some crossover and some carry on from this movie within Damnation. But we'll have to wait and see till we watch that movie. But no, I very much enjoyed this movie. Great action within it. Kind of just wish this was made again, but now, you know, like they do with video games, and they just kind of do a reanimation or a reversioning of a video game. If they did that with this and just upgraded the graphics, I think this would be a fine film. I really do. I think it's a good Resident Evil film. If we're using caveats, it's a good Resident Evil film, and I'd watch it again happily. But yeah, there is rubbish graphics and a weird love story. But if you can see past that, it's a fine movie.
I gotta agree with you guys. I think so far, from the two that we've done so far, this reigns supreme. And for as much as we shit on this film and really nitpicked it, as I said at the top, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun romp that I enjoyed throughout, that didn't overstep its mark. And I think that's something that, showing restraint in these animated films is something that I think is going to go out the fucking window. Especially when we move into going through on the rooftops and all that nonsense that happens from there. But we will wait and see as this journey continues. Now that has been it for this Resident Evil review discussion. Audience, I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, then there's a couple of ways that you can let us know. Put a like on the video and subscribe. We are going to have new Resident Evil review discussions out every 2 weeks on the channel. Oh, there's a lot of them to go through. And after we finish the animated, well, got to do the live actions. And that's going to be a trip in itself. My God, I'm not looking forward to that one, boys. The things I do for you, audience. The things I do for you. That has been it, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Phil, Spence, thank you as always for joining me on this. I really appreciate you guys. And if you want to see more from the lads and myself, of course, remember to check out our podcast, In PS We Trust, a PlayStation podcast. Goes up every 2 weeks on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course right here on YouTube. Links are in the description. Thank you all for watching. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. See ya.